Hello and welcome to another episode of Dude, Is This Thing On? I'm your host, Tyler Daswick, and joining me, as always, from Phoenix, Arizona, it's our producer, Emilio Cariotti.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Emilio, we have a good show for the people today. We are going to start. Our opener is going to be a look at Wild Wild Country, the Netflix documentary series. Then, based off of your grab bag from last week, we're going to get into HBO's Barry, which wrapped up on Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, had the season
finale.
Season finale. And then after that, we're going to do classic grab bag, classic GB.
Cool. Groovy.
All right, dude, I'm excited. We made last minute plans to talk about Wild Wild Country.
Very last minute, last second, some would say.
I have seen the series. You are almost done, right?
Yeah, I'm about halfway through the last episode. I pretty much binged it at work today. So.
Oh no way!
Yeah, while I was supposed to be working, I was actually just sneaking peeks at Wild Wild Country. Really fucking good show.
Yeah, it's
or documentary, I guess.
What strikes me first is I'm shocked I didn't know about it.
I knew about it. I knew about it because we mentioned it a little bit while I was talking about Far Cry. Because when Far Cry came out, this documentary dropped around the same time. And a lot of people were drawing like comparisons, and the developers had even said like, oh, this is some good like complimentary viewing if you like the setting of Far Cry.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people who I know played the game or were interested in the game at the very least, like really got into the documentary. But I think my judgment was so clouded by how pissed off I was about Far Cry that I was like, fuck this and fuck the documentary too. I ain't fucking watching it.
Yeah.
And then last night, actually, I watched another documentary produced by the Duplass brothers called Evil Genius.
That's a new one, right?
Yeah. So I was watching it, and the Duplass brothers' names like popped up in the opening credits in the first episode, and I was like, oh yeah, they just did Wild Wild Country. If this is any good, I should probably watch that afterwards. And the documentary ended up being really good, so I was like, I guess I'm watching Wild Wild Country.
All right, sweet. Okay, and I think I have little like minor things about Wild Wild Country that I don't want to like pick apart too much, but I think the thing that like stands out most, especially just the interviews, are incredible.
It's really fucking good.
The interviews are really good. The people are so forthcoming and really honest and vivid. But I think also just the sheer amount of footage is insane.
This was like really archived. It was archived, not only by the people who were living in the commune, but like by the people who were living in the town and by all the reporters who were like reporting on this thing. It was like a really big deal. I'm surprised I'd never heard of it before this documentary and before Far Cry 5, because like kind of something kind of similar happened not too long ago. I don't know if you remember that standoff that happened in Oregon about 5 or 6 years ago. About the government and the ranching rights. Oh, it was a big thing. I mean, when I was in school doing political science, like it was a big case study that we were all looking at. Like, oh, what the fuck? Okay. And the fact that some of the people who were implicated came from Phoenix and Tucson and stuff like that, and had gone to Oregon to like fight the government, it was like kind of a big deal. And I'm surprised that this did not come up at all during that conversation about like states' rights and sovereignty and all that shit. And it's such like a big deal in this documentary that like I'm just amazed that I had never heard of it before this.
Yeah, I had no idea, because when you hear about the Colts, I mean, you think about like violence and like law shootouts and Kool-Aid and all that stuff. But this one, it was really like a political fight, which I thought
was, which kind of like, I don't know for you, not that I empathized or I didn't empathize, I sympathized kind of with the cult members from time to time. Obviously, they were poisoning people and they were kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But for most of their political battles, they were kind of doing everything like by the book. And people were essentially just pissed off that they were gaming the system to like their advantage, even though they technically weren't like breaking the law like a lot of the time. I mean, there were obviously some things that they were doing that were very amoral and illegal, but every once in a while, like they would do something legally, and I'd be like, "Touche, cultists!" Like that is very, very fucking savvy.
Yeah.
And so I really like the documentary because quite a few times, I had to kind of give it to the cultists and be like, "Well, kind of tough titties, townsmen. Like you lost fair and square. You held a vote, and you just came up short, and now they own the town. Next time, like think that stuff through." So that was like really kind of interesting because there were certain points where I was getting mad at myself for kind of having to give like a couple of points to the cultists for coming out on top. I don't know if you felt that way.
I don't know if I felt as conflicted, because my head automatically goes to like, okay, if you're a cult, you have to have this like foundational belief system. And I think the one kind of shortcoming of the series is they don't really get into what the Rajneesh really believe.
And right.
So,
it wasn't like a Jonestown documentary where they really outlined like the religious practices of Jim Jones and how he like rose in the pulpit and stuff like that.
Right. You don't get like the Scientology creation myth or anything.
Right.
You really just get like kind of some of their practices and things like that, but that is all used to contrast them with the townspeople and kind of like illustrate that conflict, because it really is about sort of like basically how they rig all of these local politics, but not even like rig, they just manipulate them.
Yeah, it's not even like, and that's, you know, the morality of it can be discussed, obviously. Whether or not something is legal and whether or not something is just, it's two very different things. And for the most part, they were acting very amorally, but for a lot of it, they were acting very legally, and it was a very interesting look on how the vocal majority can really stomp out the justified minority if it plays its cards right, and it's kind of spooky. Yeah,
but interesting too that like certain like charismatic or powerful figures within the Rajneesh cult were able to dominate and establish at the same time. Like they had their own political machinations.
They had their old like cult of personalities, essentially. Like you had the two people in charge. You had Osho, and then you had his like right hand woman, Sheila. And she was like a capo, man. And they broke down like, I mean, their whole thing is like free love and nobody is like anybody in society is free flowing or just going to have all this weird tantric sex. And then when it really came down to like brass tacks, they all had jobs to play and they all had like rankings within like the organization and a certain amount of political pull and respect. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's like Congress, just like with more sex. So I was like, okay, cool. They're pretty much all completely full of shit. But it was crazy to see like a lot of them. So I watch a lot of these documentaries because I really do like to learn about Jonestown and the occult and Waco and all that shit, because it's just really interesting, and it has like, you know, some political aspects to it too.
Totally.
But whenever I watch documentaries on Waco or Jonestown in particular, definitely Jonestown, most of the cultists that they are interviewing like years after the fact have sort of seen the folly of their ways, and they're like, oh yeah, Jim Jones was totally fucking crazy. I don't know why I believe that guy. Now 3 of my best friends and my children are all dead because they drank the Kool-Aid, and like I just didn't go to Jonestown. But with this guy's cult, not most 99.999% of them were still like totally Osho. Yes. They were like, yeah, fuck the government. They were ruining our lives. We wanted peace and love. And if they didn't like it, then we were going to fucking kill them. And I was like, whoa, okay, cool. Like they were totally still in, even though the guy's been dead since like 86 or something like that. And like it's been years since this thing had been like a principal philosophy, and yet they're still all wearing reds in their interviews, and just like, oh my God, man, he got their hooks in deep.
Yeah, I had to totally recalibrate, I remember, for the first episode, because I went in expecting something like Going Clear, the Scientology documentary, where you're like, okay, we're going to talk to people who were in it but like got out, or like, you know, like cult refugees or whatever.
Yeah, no, these guys are in.
Totally in. And so the first one is like, yeah, I think, you know, Osho was a brilliant, beautiful man. You're just like, wait, what? Like, and it creates so much weird tension. It created a lot of weird tension for me, because I was like, don't you realize how crazy you sound? But that made it so gripping and good to watch.
It made it really unsettling. Yeah, where it's like, man, there's people out there that there's no reaching them. And the crazy part is, this is something that I thought was nuts. About, I think it was the second or third episode, they're starting to talk about all the different people that are joining, and this is when they're really gaining momentum. And for the viewers that may or may not be listening to us, if you've ever seen any of these documentaries on like Jonestown or Waco or any sort of occult sort of thing, the documentary usually follows a pattern. First, there's this really nice crescendo where the cult is in its happy days, and they're getting a bunch of money, and they're fucking in the forest, and, you know, they have thousands of followers, and blah, 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 blah. And then it hits some sort of weird plateau where they do something so outlandish where they cross the line. And then it's just into the jungles of Guyana and killing yourself. Like, it all just kind of goes downhill.
Yeah.
So this was during the first couple episodes where everything's sweet and sour for these guys. And they're talking to a girl who just joined the cult. And she's the daughter of Congressman Leo, the guy who got assassinated investigating Jonestown and led to the mass suicide. She's part of the fucking cult. And they're like, are you not seeing the similarities between this and the cult that murdered your fucking father like 15 years ago? And she's like, oh, no. Well, if my father was still around, he would come to the cult here in Oregon, like the city that they had built, and he would see that it's completely different. And then later in the season, you find out that it is exactly the fucking same, and that I just can't believe some of these people. It's fascinating that someone could be that just like kind of blind to the truth. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, that does make me wonder, because I think about sometimes especially with something this long and in depth, you have time to sort of think about like how they did it and how they did the interviews and everything. And that's where my head goes just because of my job. I'm like, okay, how'd they get to this question? And I feel like maybe you agree or disagree, but I feel like they didn't ever really push back against the people they interviewed, and I don't feel like they ever really challenged them. They just kind of were like, tell us what happened when, with like the water at the salad bar or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was never anything that was like, okay, Sheila said this, but we actually did some digging and it turned out that wasn't true, that this actually happened. It was a lot of kind of like taking people at their word. And don't get me wrong, it was super interesting, and I watched the whole thing, but I wonder what it would look like, how it would be different if they had been like, your critics say you're insane. Like, how do you respond to that? I wonder what would have looked different if that had been more of a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There were certain times where I wanted to scream at the screen, like, ask her about the fucking salad bar sort of moment. And they don't, obviously, because I don't think their intent was really to do a lot of investigative kind of journalism. I think their intent was to just show you this story, how it unfolds, and how investigators, like in the time, were able to break apart this kind of organization. And so I think a lot of those questions kind of get answered with like the newsreel footage that they show.
Okay.
So in particular, they try, I don't want to spoil too much. I mean, it's a documentary, like there's nothing really to spoil because technically it all happened. But there's a certain point where they're trying to assassinate high profile people within the cult. Like the cult is trying to assassinate people that they disagree with within the community.
Right.
And at one point they try and poison. By the way, can I just say that these people are terrible at poisoning? They poisoned like 800 people, didn't kill a single one of them. Like, come on, man. Yeah. The odds are in your favor to kill at least one elderly person. How do you not get anybody at this point, right? But in any case, they try to kill one more person, and lo and behold, the guy survives. And they go and interview the person who orchestrated the hit, Sheila. And they're like, your critics say, and this is an interview that is happening on a newsreel footage 20 years prior. It's not being done by the people behind the camera for the documentary. But they go, your critics say that, you tried to kill this doctor within your community. How do you like explain yourself? And she starts laughing and she makes up some bullshit like excuse that we as the viewer know is a lie because we have, the power of foresight and hindsight to understand that we have the evidence to show that she actually did. And in fact, at this point in time, 2018, she had admitted to it later on. So we know it's a lie. So I feel like a lot of those questions like kind of got answered like in media res of the story kind of like unfolding.
Yeah, man, I thought Sheila, that is one of the best documentary, for lack of a better word, characters I've seen. Like, amazing that they had access to her. Amazing that she talked for as long as she did. That she told them about the things she did. And I mean, and the footage of her is like weirdly watchable, and like it's so creepy, but also you're just like, oh, what? And the interview, like the live documentary interview, she is old, but she has a kind of like, sort of strange energy. But man, you see that old footage of her and she's like coming out firing on all these talk shows and news shows. And you're just like, oh my gosh,
it's nuts. I mean,
had so much power.
I know, it's crazy. She's like threatening to cut people's heads off, and you have 6,000 people cheering for her to do it. It's like opiate of the masses level shit, but it's crazy. Like a lot of, I think the best parts of this documentary come from kind of like you said, the interviews, the way that they're set up, and where they are in each room that they're conducted in, and especially Sheila's interviews, like. You like you said, you see contrasting footage of her back in like the late 70s and early 80s, and she's this young, like short-haired, like just bulldog, essentially, like in your face, like kind of bitch that's not taking no for an answer, will push, shove, punch anyone in the face to get what she wants, like really, really brutal. And then you see footage of her now, and she looks like fucking Indira Gandhi. She's got like the robes on her, and she's so sweet and a little grandmother. And, oh no, we were in love, and we wanted to spread love. And then it cuts to her being like, I will fucking kill you, motherfucker. I will like 86 your fucking ass. Like, she's just going crazy, crazy, crazy. And it's just like, it's so weird to be like, I'm not buying this. Like, and I don't think the interviewers were buying it either, but in her mind, she's like, these suckers are buying it. And like, I don't think anyone really is buying that she's some sweet old grandmother. Like, she's sitting there crying, talking about how she was in love with Osho and stuff like that and all this stuff. And then it cuts to footage of her being like, all right, I'm going to need you to drop a bomb on this building. It's like nuts, the contrasting between them. It's like, bitch, you poisoned 700 innocent people. There's no fucking way I'm going to like shed a tear for you right now. Nuts.
Yeah, and the Osho thing reminds me, man, that was the one part I also wish they had pressed into a little more. You had a lot of people like talking about his charisma and his magnetism and all that stuff, but he always kind of struck me as very aloof and sort of like I just didn't get it. And
he was high. I mean, he was high. He's high like most of the time. And he took a vow of silence for most of the documentary. Like, most of those 7 years, he was silent. So, like, there's not really that much footage of him. You can go back and listen to old recordings. And, in fact, I had to listen to some old recordings of him for college one time.
Okay.
That's my story that kind of goes along with this. But, yeah, the reason he's so aloof is because he's on opioids and laughing gas for, like, most of his life in America. So,
yeah, I guess that makes sense. But, okay, you hinted at this story before the show. You have a weird connection to all of this. So
I do.
So what
Very
happened?
odd. So, I mean, like, I remember hearing about Osho, like, when I was in college, and I didn't really pay that much attention to it, and I kind of forgot who he was. And then a couple years later, I was listening to an album. I can't remember the one, but it has an intro. It's like a rock album, like pretty heavy stuff. And it's got an intro that has one of Osho's, like, preachings on it before it just starts like going real headbanger. What? And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Osho. That definitely sounds like those recordings that I heard. And then I saw this documentary and I saw a picture of his face and someone referred to him as Osho, and I was like, oh, it's all making fucking sense now. So freshman year of college, before I went to Northeastern, I don't know if you remember, I was at a little school called Seton Hall University, South Orange, New Jersey.
Yes.
And I was there for the first year of school, and I had to take, as everyone does, like an intro to English class. Even if you've already taken English AP, they for some reason still make you do it. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll take this stupid class. And so my first semester, my class was at like 9:30 in the morning, and I hated waking up for it, and I was almost always hungover every single class. And so I show up the first day, and I have this older woman who's probably like, you know, in her late 50s, early 60s. She's got like rainbow colored dyed hair, crazy fingernails, a bunch of jewelry and stuff like that, really flowy dress, very new age. And I was like, oh, she was definitely like a hippie back in the 70s, whatever. Like I care. I think it's cool personally. So I like really liked her, and she really liked a lot of the same books and movies as me. So fuck it. We got along.
Cool.
I can't remember her name, and even if I did, I wouldn't say it here. But like a couple months in, I remember I come in, and she just, I don't know why, she just looked like she was like in a pissed off mood or something like that. And I just remember asking her, like, Mrs. Professor, like, what's up? And she's like, nothing, you know, just we're just gonna do the lesson today. Where's everyone? And everyone was there except for the one stoner kid who never showed up anyway. So she was like, okay, let's start.
Right.
And pops up a big picture of Osho's face, and she's like, does anyone know who this is? And I maybe said like, I don't know, he looks like a guru, you know?
Yes.
She's like, very good. That's his really long name in Hindi, Osho, also known as Osho. And I go, oh, cool. She's like, he was a really big influence on my life.
Oh my God.
Like, he was a really big influence on millions of people, and he loved peace, love, and happiness. And then the fucking government, she even said, she like muttered it, but like, we could all hear it. She's like, and then the fucking FBI like killed him.
What?
And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? But I was hungover, so I was just like, yeah, okay, cool. And so she's doing all these teachings on Osho and stuff like that, and she's like, yeah, and they had these beautiful communes all over the United States, and I would visit them and all this stuff, and I was like, okay, cool. Again, not really paying that much attention. She obviously didn't talk about all the raging sex and the, like, addiction and all the crazy shit in Oregon. She didn't mention that at all. She was just like, here's a guy named Osho. I love his prophetic teachings. He's a really big like Hindi master, and he helps you unlock like enlightenment, blah, 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 blah. And so she gives us a bunch of his teachings and makes us read like a bunch of his stuff, and we had to write like a paper on it. But that's my connection to it, really, is that I had a teacher who was super fucking into Osho and very heavily believed that the government had assassinated him after he left the United States.
Wow.
Fun times. And I never really connected it until I was watching this documentary. I was like, oh shit, that's the same guy that my teacher was like,
that's amazing,
going on
dude.
about.
Do you remember, it's a long shot, do you remember anything about the writings or anything you had to read?
Yeah, I mean, it was very like, honestly, it's very like generic stuff. It's sort of the stuff that they talk about like in the things. It's like you have to reach like enlightenment and stuff like that, and only through accepting like who you are as a human and all your flaws can you reach enlightenment. And it was very much against like traditional Hinduism and stuff, because Seton Hall was like a religious institution, and part of it was you had to take a general religion class. They didn't make you do like theology like they did in high school for us, but you had to take like a general class. And the teacher who taught that class was also like a New Age hippie who was really into Hinduism, so that was our main focus. So I had read the Bhagavad Gita a little bit and stuff like that. So I was aware of like what Hinduism was, and so it was a little bit like that, but it was very much about like letting go and like letting out your emotions and stuff like that, and not being afraid to be like very emotional. While Hinduism is about being, and Maoism and Taoism and Taoism and Taoism and all the other isms are very much about being like in control and stuff like that, and being very inwardly reflecting. This was like that, but it didn't shy away from fucking and yelling and threatening and stuff like that. And you pretty much just see that in the way that these people act. Yeah. Like that one documentary that they show in the middle of the documentary about like their therapy sessions.
Oh, dude.
I was like, oh, fuck. Nuts, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I'm like, how'd they get a camera there?
I don't. Well, I thought this was hilarious. So the documentary is made in like, you know, the early 80s. So a video camera is about the size of a fucking bazooka. And the cult claims that the guy who videotaped that somehow snuck a camera into the meeting. How the fuck is he sneaking a camera into a meeting? Like, it's very obvious that is there. There's probably a huge blinking light on it, you know? Either he came in with like a huge cooler on his back with a bunch of wires and blinking lights on it, or he asked them if he could record their weird tantric sex, and they said yes, and then regretted it.
Yeah, man. That's Wild Wild Country. It is. It's on Netflix. It's really fun to talk about, and
yeah, you should definitely watch it.
Super fascinating. But dude, let's transition into Barry a little bit. This was your GB pick from the last episode.
Yes.
And so kind of, you know, per your recommendation, I watched the whole thing in a weekend.
Like harassed you into watching it, pretty much.
Yeah. Dude, this show is really good. And
yeah, I told you.
and here's like why I was hung up on it, and kind of what made the switch. There was something about like, okay, a hitman goes to LA and takes up an acting class that just felt like such a random premise with like, it just seemed like kind of thoughtless. I was like, I don't understand. It feels like you either wanted to make an acting show or you wanted to make a hitman show. Mm-hmm. Why are those two things together? And then it was actually one of our contributors on the website who was emailing me about it, and he articulated it in a way I thought was really smart. He's like, this guy is a hitman. He has had to strip himself of all emotion and feeling, and all of his trauma from being a veteran and all the loss that he's experienced and all the killing that he's had to do. He's just an empty vessel. Mm-hmm. And why it's funny is now he has to take an acting class where he is supposed to be tapping into all of these feelings and emotions and all of this backstory and history. and he can't do it. He has to like learn how to be a person. And I thought that was so smart. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, I get it. I'm in. And
yeah, I probably should have explained it like that. My bad. Whoops.
But I thought it was awesome. And I think for me, it really started and ended with Bill Hader. This kind of came out of nowhere for me, dude.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's really good.
Yeah.
I you know, Emmys don't really mean a ton, but he should be nominated for an Emmy. He should get some recognition for it. I think he's really good. But like, was it surprising to you that he was this good?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I had heard of a movie called The Skeleton Twins, which, funny enough, is also tied to the Duplass brothers. So going full circle.
Is that really true?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they directed or produced or wrote it. They're attached to it somehow.
Wow.
But I hadn't actually seen it. I just seen like clips of it and stuff. And it looked really good. And Bill Hader's character looked very well acted. So I had heard, or at least like understood, that he could act well. But like, I honestly didn't have too high expectations. I watched this because I love Bill Hader and I think he's fucking hysterical in pretty much anything that he does.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to see it. And the first episode ends and the credits are up and I'm like, I'm in. Like, and I watched the next 4 episodes like that same night. And then I watched them again the next day, like all the way through. He just does such a great job. And the way that I explained it to you is it's kind of like Taxi Driver, but like funny. And I still stick by that, like that, like depression and loneliness. And there's some long scenes in there where he's alone and really contemplating like what the fuck he's doing with like a rifle pointed at some guy's head from 500 yards at 2 a.m, or like why he's just had to shoot this guy in like downtown Detroit for like shit pay, and just like what every single pull of the trigger takes a little bit away from him, you know. And it's really sad and really funny at the same time.
Yeah, I was surprised too. With Hader specifically, he's not asked to do a lot of comedy. Like it's funny because his character is in these situations like the acting class and those exercises and all that stuff, but they really don't give him a lot of jokes.
No, all the comedy kind of happens around him, and that's what's funny, is to see this stiff murderer around people acting whimsical and artistic and funny, and you know, the funny Russians and stuff like that who are just very blasé about killing people, and he's sort of just like, okay, yeah, I could do that. And that's sort of where the comedy is, that clash between his like emptiness and everyone else's like fullness. Yeah.
And I thought the humor too was really like specific. Like it was funny in a way that not a lot of shows are funny. Like, I mean, I thought that the contrast between him and all the acting students is good. And there's, I don't know who it is, but there's this guy who plays like the classic, supposedly emotionless, like Chechen, like Chechen. A mobster.
Yeah, Soho Hank. He's like my favorite character in the show.
The guy with no eyebrows.
Yeah, Soho Hank. He's like the funniest part of that show. I love that character.
Funny. Yeah, I thought it was so great. He does the classic, like the Albert Brooks in Drive, shave his eyebrows so he can't emote. And then he's like an extremely emotional and funny character.
Yeah. Well, did you know? So that character is played by Anthony Carrigan, I want to say his name is. Okay. Actually has alopecia. So he is actually like bald, hairless. Like he doesn't actually have any hair on his body.
No way.
And so he usually gets typecast as like creepy, villainous, like super villain. I'm pretty sure he plays a character, I can't remember who he plays, in Gotham and stuff like that. And so they typecast him here. They put a bunch of Russian prison tats on him.
Yeah.
But they give him a very good sense of male fashion and like a very charming, funny personality, but also like a really thick Chechen accent. And it just like fucking works. I don't know like why, but his character, every time that character comes on screen, I'm just like all ears, man. I just want to hear this guy like react to something, anything, you know. It's fucking hysterical.
Yeah, and I my other favorite side character was Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler's like the acting coach. Also pretty good.
Like, God, so funny and just so like self-serious and intense. It was great.
He's like your typical over serious, not necessarily pretentious, but very serious about the craft of acting, although his career is like mediocre at best.
Dude, the funniest but also one of the sadder scenes is when he gives that little audition for the commercial. Do you remember that?
Oh my god, yeah. He's like, I can read it 2 ways.
Yeah. He's so professional about it. He gives both. He just walks in. It's like one take of like 90 seconds, maybe.
Maybe. It's like 3 or 4 word lines.
Yeah, but he just he knocks it out of the park. I thought he was great. I thought he was as good in this as he is in like an Arrested Development or anything like that.
I think so. Honestly, anything that he's in, and he's a pretty good actor too. He's not, I don't think he's got like the same range as a lot of like greats, but like the characters that he can play, I love Henry Winkler. I love him in Waterboy. Like he's fantastic in that, you know? I love him in Arrested Development. I love him pretty much in anything because he's just like, and a lot of the same ways as like Bill Hader. He's very like charming and like aloof and affable, and he's just like this very free flowy, like leaf blowing in the wind kind of guy who really thinks that he understands Bill Hader's character to a T, but in actuality has no fucking clue what is going on in like this guy's head. And that's more comedy. That's essentially what the comedy is like everyone being like, yeah, Barry, like I know exactly what's going through his head. He's a war vet and he's got PTSD from it, and that's why he's so off-putting and serious like all the time. But in actuality, it's because he just got done killing like 6 people.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you specifically. I'm having trouble. How would you describe the humor to another person?
It's hard
because for all the kind of like mocking acting stuff that I think is really good, there's also a bit that I thought was really funny. Is super intense moment of the show is when they do the bum rush of the SUV on that airplane strip, and they get shot up. But then that's the end of one episode. At the beginning of the next one is from the perspective of the cartel,
of the Bolivians,
Bolivian guys, and they just. And they just see these guys come up with metal music. They just kind of look at each other, and then they just spray it with their assault rifles, and it just like turns over. And it's super intense, but in a funny way of just kind of how casual it is.
Yeah.
And so it can go all the way there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good example is like, it'll show perspectives from both sides, and a lot of scenes will end and then it'll roll into a lot of times the same scene or a little bit of an overlapping scene from a different perspective. And I think that has a lot to do with like the camera work too. And not to sound too like, oh, I know the camera angles and blah, blah, blah. But I think that one of the cinematographers, if not the main cinematographer, is this guy named Jason Trost. And if the name sounds familiar, it's because him and his brother, what the hell is his brother's name? Trey Trost? Something like that. Anyway, it's J Tro and something Tro. And they do a lot of like interesting movies together. They did the FP. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but that's like the Fraser Park. It's like the Dance Dance Revolution post-apocalyptic movie.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And if you go back and you just watch the trailer of that, you don't even need to see the movie, although I do recommend it. It's a very interesting movie to watch. If you go back and just watch the trailer for the FP and then watch like the 4th or 5th episode of this show, you will see that the camera work is exactly the same, and the way that it's filmed is exactly the same, and the sweeping angles and the jumping very quickly back and forth between like characters and stuff like that. And it worked really well in the FP and made that movie like pretty funny. And I think that has a lot to do with why the comedy works like here is this like this really quick like jumping back and forth between like these different characters.
Yeah, and the other person I wanted to mention, I thought you were going to say his name. I think he did episodes 5, 6, and 7 of Barry, but I'm not sure. This guy Hiro Murai, who also did all of Atlanta and This Is America. Same dude, and you can tell he did the bum rush. I think from both sides,
both perspectives. Yeah, that's a really good call. That makes a lot of sense. I remember hearing that, but I completely forgot. Yeah, you can definitely tell. You can tell it's a comedy and it's very artistic in a lot of ways that you wouldn't really like notice, and that's becoming really like standard for comedies now. Like Atlanta's the same way, where it's funny, but like Donald Glover isn't funny really in Atlanta.
Right.
Personally, I don't think so. A lot of funny, weird, like eclectic shit is happening around him, and that's where the comedy comes from. It's very much the same way with Barry and the episodes of Barry. It's like like we said before, like Bill Hader is just this piece of cardboard and all this crazy wacky shit's happening to him, and it's his lack of sort of like empathy to everything that's happening that's funny, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And I know that's hard to describe, but I personally think if you like Atlanta, you'll probably like Barry.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call too. I wanted to ask you this also. So season 1 is over, has a really good ending.
Yeah, I was a little like lukewarm on the ending personally. I thought the second to last episode was way better than the last episode, but that's just because the second to last episode was so fucking good that it's really hard to follow it up, honestly. Second to last episode had me like silent for 20 minutes after it ended, like, wow.
Yeah,
you know? So it's hard to follow up.
Yeah, Bill Hader probably hits his peak in that episode. Yeah. It's intense. But okay, well, all right, if you weren't crazy about it, I think in any case, it's kind of hard to tell like what a season 2 will look like.
Yeah, because it kind of jumps a little bit, and I don't know if that's a real jump or if that's another daydream. I'm kind of convinced that it was a daydream. My girlfriend thinks that it was a real jump. I don't know. I thought the jump was so jarring that it had to have been a daydream, because that's how all of his daydreams started. It's just like hard cut to some other time and place. So I don't know. I was kind of confused by it.
I mean, I think it's real, because if it was a daydream, he wouldn't have had to kill anyone, I feel.
I don't know. I mean, I personally don't necessarily daydream of killing people, but I'm also not a killer.
But I mean, like, so, the show feels smarter than to end with like a fake out like that, and then walk back and be like, no, just kidding. I don't know. Maybe. The more I think about it, the more I think it was real, but I don't know. There's something nagging at me that it might have been a daydream. I don't know. Okay. So then a season 2, because he still is kind of. It ends with this implication that he is still gonna be fighting to be a good dude.
Life, yeah.
And I have no idea what that show looks like.
I don't even know what the next episode's going to look like, because he has to somehow explain the miraculous disappearance of this person who was totally fine like 3 hours ago to a room full of people that will absolutely notice her absence. Right. Like, the way he's really getting away with a lot of his murders is he's killing people that other people don't really care about, you know, or aren't really around to see disappear. And so I don't know. I have no idea, which is what makes me think like it might not be real, because how else are you going to get it in a believable way that's not going to make me go, bullshit, you know, like, because that's the worst. I really hate Dexter, not just because of the ending, but I really didn't like the show. And The Americans kind of does this too, which is why I didn't really like it past the second season, where you can murder like a room full of people and the FBI will be this close on your tail, and then some ridiculous red herring Deus Ex shit will fall out of the sky and you make a clean getaway. And that's cool once or twice, but like with a show like Dexter, where pretty much the only reason he gets away is just fucking sheer luck every single time, it just like makes me kind of groan and be like, oh, come on, man. There's no way someone is this fucking lucky. Like, what is this guy, the Ferris Bueller of murdering? Like, it's bullshit, you know? And I really hope they don't go that route, because that'll make me kind of like a little disappointed in the writing. Based on everything they've done, I don't think they're going to be that dumb, but who knows?
No, I don't think so either. I can picture a season 2 pilot that starts immediately after this one, where Sally wakes up next to him and they, you know, are immediately like, oh, where's the cop? Or I can picture one that is another time jump and he's in prison. Or is another time jump and he's like gotten away with it, and then we kind of have to figure that out.
Yeah, maybe it would be more interesting if he gotten away with it. If he goes to prison, that's kind of like dumb, because then it's like, okay, everything doesn't really matter because he ends up getting caught at the end anyway. I don't know. Really good show. Highly recommend it. It's on HBO. Like, you have to watch it through them, unfortunately, unless you want to, you know, do it through illegal means, which more power to you, I suppose. But yeah, definitely check it out. It's definitely a great watch. But I personally think that this season, this last episode of Westworld beat out the season finale of Barry for me.
You know, man, I actually I'm glad you mentioned it, because when I watched Westworld, I was like, I hope I talked to Emilio about this, because I think it's the best episode of the show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This past episode was fan-fucking-tastic.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was an amazing episode. It was fantastic. Had you already seen that in like your early access, or are we caught up? Am I caught up with you, or I'm still a little behind?
I have seen half of the first season, so you have one more to go.
Oh, really? What episode are we on? 4 or 5?
Okay. We've seen 4. Yeah.
Oh, so it's a 10 episode season. All right, cool.
Yeah. No, the new Westworld was good, man. Because I thought that they stopped dicking around and they're just like, here's what it's about. Here's what it's for. Here's what we're doing.
Finally, everything came together.
Yeah, and I think look, like, is it a new concept that we're trying to preserve the consciousness of people who are dead? No, like we've seen that before in other things. But I'm glad it's there. I'm glad it's an answer. It was a satisfying enough answer, and they introduced it and told you about it
very, very interestingly
in a really cool way.
Yeah, it was really cool.
This guy, I can't remember the actor. He does a great job.
Oh my god, he did fantastic. When he was like glitching out, I was like, holy shit, looks like he's having a seizure. My girlfriend was like, that's amazing. This guy should get an award.
Yeah, it was awesome, and every time that they did it, and he kind of had to alter his performance just a little bit, or like keep it the same in other ways. I thought it was awesome. The Bernard stuff was okay, where we kind of realized that he has like a consciousness
in his pocket.
In his weird sense.
Yeah.
But like now we get to like, oh, who is that going to be? I just hope that in the next episode 6, whatever, just tell us who it is. Just tell us who it is.
Yeah, kind of like get on with it. I don't think so. I mean, you know better than me that I have the suspicion that it's gonna go to just Samurai World with Maeve and stuff, and it's gonna be just focusing on like her story being stuck in this very different environment.
Yeah, so. we're gonna see Samurai World for sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was spoiled for me in the trailer. I don't know why they put that in there, but I saw that. I knew that was gonna happen like before the season everything came out. I was pretty pissed actually.
Yeah. Although they tried to surprise us with this sort of like imperial world with the British people and like the jungle and the tigers and all that stuff.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, kind of cool.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. So I questioned my girlfriend. Sorry to cut you off. I know I'm talking a bunch, but I questioned my girlfriend yesterday. Like, so in Westworld, you got guns, and Imperial India world, you got guns, but now you have Samurai World where you have swords. And like learning how to master a samurai sword, I feel like takes a little bit more skill than just pulling a trigger like a buffoon.
Yes.
So like, I wonder how the guests fare in that sort of society where like I can imagine them being like all dressed up like a samurai warrior, but then they pull out their sword and they just flail around like a fucking dead mackerel because they don't really know how to use it. I just thought that was sort of like interesting, and I don't know how that would pair well with shooting people.
Yeah, that's a good little thought. I mean, I think that kind of speaks to the best and worst parts of the show. Like it's fun to like have those thought experiments, but if you have too many of them, you're suddenly like, wait, how would this work actually?
Yeah, exactly. You start punching holes.
Right. But yeah, I'm glad you liked the episode. It was one of the few that I came away where I was like, I actually like really loved that hour of TV.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
I watched it twice.
Nice. Yeah, they're not screwing around anymore.
Thank God. I'm because the first 3 episodes I was like, oh God, I'm really not digging this show anymore. And then I saw this episode, I was like, that's the Westworld I remember. Especially the interviews. Because like you said, I like the way that they presented it. He wasn't like a human brain floating around in a pickle jar, like glowing whenever he talked, and that was like his consciousness, like some stupid 1950s teenagers from outer space bullshit. Like, it was just so well done. I really liked it. Yeah. Good episode. A little sneak in there, piggybacking off of Barry, I know, but
Yeah, all good.
Check it out.
All right, so that's Barry. It's on HBO. Westworld on HBO too, of course. For your GB, I want to ask you about the other documentary that you watched, Evil Genius.
Evil Genius, yeah. So that's what got me onto. Originally, my GB was gonna be Wild Wild Country, and then you told me that you would actually went ahead and watched the whole thing anyway. So there we go. There's our fucking opener.
Yeah.
But Evil Genius is good. It's not as good as Wild Wild Country. I'll say that. It's It's got a little bit less of like the charm to it. It's more Michael Moore-y. Not necessarily in the comedic style, but in the way that it's filmed, and it has like a lot of voiceover and stuff like that. It's still really interesting. So essentially it follows the story of this guy named Brian Wells, who's a pizza delivery man in Erie, Pennsylvania, up on the Great Lake.
Oh, yeah.
And one day he walks into a bank and holds it up with a cane gun that's a shotgun, like a gun that's like, looks like a cane, and walks out with $8,000. And he's stopped by the police, and it turns out that someone has strapped a bomb to his neck, a la Jigsaw from fucking like Saw, and forced him to rob the bank. And while they're waiting to disarm it, it blows up and kills him. It fucking kills him on live TV, right? Just blows his head off pretty much,
Oh my gosh.
And so the investigation starts. I'm like, well, who the fuck did this in this small, like, peaceful town of Erie, Pennsylvania? And it turns out that it was these two sociopaths who were like living like chameleons in society, and they just were master manipulators. And one of them is very crazy, and the other one is very sane but very like cunning. And there's some speculation on whether or not the pizza delivery man was in on it and thought that the bomb was fake or whatever, but like it's super eerie at some points, because they kill like 3 or 4 people to try and get away with it. And I definitely would watch it. It's only 4 episodes long, and they're a little bit shorter than each episode of Wild Wild Country. So you'll blow through it in a couple hours, really. I would definitely check it out. It's really cool. It's produced by the Duplass brothers, but I think Wild Wild Country is directed by them too, isn't it, or is it not?
I don't know for sure.
Maybe not. It's definitely got a different direction, I would say. The interviews are still as good, and the information is sort of, splayed out in the same sort of way. Good music, too. I've noticed that whoever chose the music for both documentaries did a very good job. But it's interesting. I just would say that now, almost done with Wild Wild Country, that is the better documentary.
Okay, got you. All right, that is Evil Genius. It's on Netflix. Another thing on Netflix, dude, I want to tell you about, and you gotta give me some space here because I'm still trying to figure out how to describe it. But I stumbled into this comedian on Netflix, James Acaster, British dude, and he has what is being referred to as a comedy collection on Netflix called Repertoire. Repertoire is made up of 4 hour-long sets that are made to be watched in order. So, and they're like really well like designed and directed. They're all color coded. So the first one is green, the second one is yellow, the third one is red, and then the fourth one is green, yellow, and red. And and so as you watch, he starts to call back to his past performances, and he starts to weave together, not exactly linear, but like it all tells a complete story out of each 3. He kind of tells you like the end part first, and then maybe the beginning, and then the middle part, and then the fourth part is kind of like everything meets together, and you can kind of start to piece it all together. But so he tells basically a continuous story through 4 quote unquote episodes of comedy, of stand-up comedy.
Interesting.
I haven't seen anyone ever do anything like this. The closest I would come to would be something like Mike Birbiglia, who tells like one whole story over an hour, but kind of like diverts into tangents and everything. But this one is even more, I would say, like diverse than that. He has some performance aspects that are crazy. He is trying different things with comedy. Sometimes like you'll notice something weird on his shirt, and you'll just be like, that seems like that's weird. What like kind of shirt is that? But then you'll just dismiss it, and then 25 minutes into the set, he'll suddenly have a joke that references that exact weird pocket on his shirt, and then you're like, oh my god, that was totally for a reason. So
Jesus,
that's
crazy.
It's insane. It's the first one where, like, you imagine writing stand-up comedy and you're like, okay, you get your 5 minutes of material, and then maybe you find another 5 minutes, and then maybe you find another, and it kind of becomes like this patchwork,
and then you cobble it together to be like a full hour.
Right,
just tight fives.
Right. This guy wrote an hour at a time. and then an
That's
hour at a time.
Fucking nuts, dude.
Where he will, in like an Arrested Development kind of way, like set up a joke in minute 1 and pay it off in like minute 35. It is unbelievable.
So how long is each episode? So like 45 minutes or an hour, or what is it?
Each one is an hour set.
An hour like on the dot?
Not on the dot, but close.
Interesting. So like does he ever leave the stage? Like, do you get a sense that there's like cuts in between, or do you think that he did a 4-hour set and then just cut it up into 4 episodes like in post, or do you think like is he changing stages, or what's going on?
Well, each one is on the same stage, but he is in a different costume in front of a different background. So
gotcha. So there's some difference. Yeah.
So I think he did it 4 shows in 4 nights.
Same audience? Like, does the same audience
I don't think so.
How the fuck would that work for audience 3 if they're not getting audience 1 jokes?
Though I actually, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it. But it must be because in the 4th one, he has callbacks to the first one.
Yeah.
And people like lose it and like, oh my gosh.
So it has to be, yeah, they must have come back 4 nights.
Yeah.
That's a commitment.
Right.
Holy shit. Clear out a week for this guy.
Yeah, I just have never seen a stand-up performance like it, and it's so many different kinds of comedy. He at times he puts the microphone down and he'll like act something out, and it's funny. At times it's just wordplay that is funny. He uses props.
What the fuck?
It is
holy shit.
It's bizarre. It's incredibly intelligent, and the last thing I'll say is, the ending legit made my jaw drop. I was like, oh my God.
Holy shit.
It was incredible, dude.
I gotta watch this like tonight.
Yeah. Get started. It's amazing. Repertoire, James Acaster.
What the fuck? Has he done anything else? I've never heard of this guy.
I looked him up, and he had done a couple small things over in Britain. But I guess this has been a project of his for like the last 6 years.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, shit, I'll check it out for sure. Has it even caught on at all? Like, what are people saying about it? Not that really matters, but I'm just interested.
Honestly, man, I have no idea. A buddy at work was like, if you're looking for a new... He caught me because I was writing about Bo Burnham. And he was like, oh, you know who's kind of like him, who's really good, is this guy, James Acaster. I just watched this set he did.
Interesting.
And he's like, it's 4 episodes. I was like, what are you talking about? I thought it was stand-up. And he's like, no, yeah, it's 4 shows, and you watch them in a row. Like, that's crazy.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So that's The Cell, dude. Repertoire. It's awesome. We could do a whole episode about it.
Dude, do you want to? I'm going to go check it out like in the next day or 2, because I probably won't be able to watch the full thing tonight. But
if you're into it,
if I'm like catatonic afterwards, then we can definitely like get together.
Yeah, if you're into it, then hit me up. I am excited about it. It's one of those things where I was like, dang. That was cool.
Well, that blows my GB out of the water.
Yeah, it's different, right? You just have never heard of someone doing something like that.
I know. I mean, I was actually going to bring up Bo Burnham because he's the only other, and Mike Birbiglia too, but Bo Burnham is really like the one comedian that you could be like, who is the most atypical of comedians, who has a style that is completely his own and borrows really from nobody else in like the history of comedy, and has kind of made their own just genre, even though no one else is really following it. Bo Burnham, but it could be this fucking guy too, like a different way to tell a story. That's incredible.
Incredible. It's like where comedy meets like performance art.
Yeah. Well, shit. All right, cool. I'm sold.
There you go. The collection is called Repertoire, and the comedian is James Acaster. It's on Netflix. But hey, man, that'll do it for this episode. If you guys want to find my work on the internet, we'll switch up the order a little bit this week. If you guys want to find my work on the internet, you can follow me on Twitter at Tyler Daswick, or read all the good culture writing at relevantmagazine.com. Next week we'll have Piece about the finale of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, show that was recently
hubbub.
Yeah, recently resurrected. So I'm gonna cover the season finale of that, and then Solo at the end of the week, the Star Wars movie. So.
Oh God, okay. We can talk about that later, but I'm not looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, not holding my breath, but
no, not at all. I'm breathing freely.
Yeah. relevantmagazine.com. So that's
cool.
That.
As usual, you can find me or our stuff, I guess, on YouTube.com/Dude Is This Thing On. And you can also find us on SoundCloud, Dude Is This Thing On, ditto. So yeah, check us out. I'm on Xbox, you know the drill, Evil Elmo. I really should get like a fucking Twitter or something, but I know I'm gonna get it and then I'm not gonna do anything with it, so it's just gonna be like empty bullshit. So I'd rather not waste people's time. I don't
know. But this episode was not a waste of time.
No, it flew by, honestly. I can't believe we just talked for an hour.
Yeah, that was a fun one, man. That'll do it for this episode. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one, guys.